today I thought we would talk a bit more in depth about how to really prepare your scholarship application. And a lot of what we're talking about today is not just specific to the Hollings. While we'll tailor that advice to this particular opportunity, a lot of it is definitely transferable as you're applying to other internships, scholarships, fellowships, etc. So today we're just going to briefly overview the application, but really the main emphasis today is going to be on letters of rec and then writing essays, because these are, I would think, what you have the most control over when you're applying. The other stuff is just like your transcript and that sort of thing, but these things I think you have it's like worth like half the points in the evaluation rubric, and yeah, you can really hey Jose, improve your application by really working on those two things in depth. Okay, so again, those of you here last week, these are, okay wait, sorry, who was here last week? Okay, most people, cool. Right, so we saw this slide last week, but these are the components of your application, and we're just going to run through these in turn. So the first three things here, we're not really going to go into too much detail about, but this is essentially like taking your CV or resume and reformatting it and putting things in the boxes that they want you to put in their boxes. For any people who are applying this year to the Hollings, we'll have an opportunity to sort of strategize or work through where to put what and how much detail to provide and stuff like that in the upcoming workshops once you return in January. So we'll be able to talk about that more then. Okay, just real briefly again here, I'm going to harp on this again. You need to get an official transcript to apply. So again, you need to get an official one, not an unofficial one, and I would recommend if you're applying that you request this once the grades for fall quarter are posted. That way you'll have as complete of a transcript as you can get given the end of January deadline. Just making sure that you have as much info in there as possible. Do transcripts here show what you're enrolled in right now too? Like for the current quarter?
I think when you order the official one, it only shows what you have completed.
Okay,
What's
okay.
finished and graded.
Cool, yeah. So then whenever your grades are posted, then that's when I would request that. Okay, so the first big thing we're talking about today are letters of rec. And just out of curiosity's sake, how many of you have asked for a letter of rec for something while you've been here at UW? Awesome. Love to hear it. So we're going to be talking through this process in depth in terms of who to ask, how to ask, and when to ask for those letters of rec. And you're going to have to ask for letters of rec. I probably asked for like a dozen letters of rec at least at this point. Probably more, as I applied for different things. Sorry, I did want to introduce myself too for people who weren't here last week. I'm Marcus. I'm a third-year PhD student here at SAFS. That's Anita. She's also a third-year PhD student at SAFS. Again, for the Hollings application, they're fairly specific on who they want you to ask for a letter of recommendation. So you need two, and at least one of them has to come from someone who's taught you during undergrad. So either a professor or a TA that you had for a class who can then have the major professor who taught the class co-sign the letter that they wrote, which can sometimes be good because you interact with TAs often considerably more than you do the actual professor if it's like a big 100+ person lecture. And then the second one can be another one of the another academic reference like that, or it can be someone they say who can speak to your capabilities related to the scholarship. So this is someone who has advised you, has been like a mentor in internship, or has been like some of you who worked in their lab, something like that. Some experience that is related in some way to what NOAA does and what their different mission fields are. So for this you probably want to ask people who you've interacted with during undergrad, and so you don't want to ask people from like your high school coaches or teachers or family members like that. That's not probably what you're looking for
you don't mind if I just jump
Please,
in. So if you don't know me, my name is Joe. I'm the academic advisor for marine biology, and I just wanted to pop in and say that occasionally I'll get requests as your academic advisor for your major, and while I am related to the operation of the program, usually my answer is not a judgment on your individual qualities for the application, but to tell people that I haven't really been in an evaluative relationship with you. So I know about the program, I advise people, but I haven't really been in a position to evaluate the quality of your work like a supervisor or like a teacher. In this case, so I'm not really the best fit, even though I'm a familiar face from your program.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Also, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, would you say it's better to either have 2 academic references or 1 academic reference and 1 like experience-related reference, or are they like similar?
Yeah, my next slide is a little bit about who to ask to get to your question. So it sort of goes to my first point, bullet point up here, that it really depends on your specific situation. In my case, when I applied for Hollings, I asked 2 professors that I had during my freshman year of undergrad. That was just because those are the people that I interacted with the most. Because the second bullet point up there, you really want people who know you individually. Someone who can say more than, Joe is in my class and he got an A. Like, that doesn't tell them that much, you know, that doesn't say anything that's not already on your transcript, that's not already in somewhere, like, that's already in another part of your application. You want someone that really can speak to your abilities, especially as it relates to the Hollings Scholarship. So, it really depends, and when you're applying next year, you can always talk about that too at that time. And yeah, I would encourage anyone, like, we'll break at different points for questions, but if you have any questions throughout, just raise your hand and we'll get to it. So the third thing up there, so I would just emphasize here, if you're a second year and you have more than 2 options, people to ask for letters of rec, that is an awesome spot to be in, and you have the opportunity to actually strategize. I definitely was not in that place when I was a second year applying for the Hollings Scholarship. I was like, okay, it'll be Dr. Norby, it'll be Dr. Garrison. Like, those are like the people that I interacted with, and it was like a very easy choice for me because like those are the only people that could speak to my abilities personally. But if you're in the great position of being able to strategize about who you pick, yeah, you want to basically pick people that know you personally, and you also want to, all other things being equal, pick people that you interacted with more recently. So like, I didn't ask someone who, for example, was like someone who I did an internship with a summer after graduating from high school, because like I had people that I interact with more recently, and those can write to me as a person now rather than me 2 years ago. Right, and so from the review instruction that they actually provide to people who are evaluating these letters of rec, they want someone who can articulate the applicant's accomplishments, experiences, or goals, and how the applicant stands out from other applicants, right? So again, if they can just say you got a good grade in the class, that's not going to help you stand out. You want someone who can really speak to who you are and what you've done. And we'll also share these slides afterwards. Yeah, there's no need to scribble down or take notes, that sort of stuff. Okay. Any other questions about who to ask letters of recommendation? Cool. Okay. So, next thing we're going to talk about is how do you ask for a letter of recommendation? And basically, how do you write an email asking someone to write you a letter of rec? And sort of what I'm going to lay out here is just a general outline of how to ask for a letter of rec, with the big caveat that it's going to be quite specific to your relationship with that person, but generally erring on the side of more detail and more professional, more formal. I guess it would be just like a general rule of thumb. And what's important to emphasize here is that how you ask for a letter of recommendation has a big impact on how good that letter of recommendation will be. Because if you do things like respect the letter writer's time, provide them good detail that can help them write a stronger letter. If you show professionalism and respect in that, that will like make them much more eager to write you a letter of recommendation than someone who just goes, hey, Dr. Guzman, can you write me a letter, please, for this? Like, Jose's not going to be as eager to write that letter as he will for someone who has really put a lot of thought and effort into it. Okay, so here are some general elements that I would generally put when I'm asking for letters of rec. So the first thing that I would put, especially if it's someone that you don't know super well, and this was definitely in the book that I was in when I was applying for Hollings, I did know my professors super well besides going to some office hours. This is a long paragraph, again I'll send you this later, but the idea is to sort of generate or start your email with sort of an introduction to sort of maybe rehashing your relationship with that person, how you've appreciated their class or really enjoyed their class or thought it was like one of the best classes you've taken at UW, that sort of thing. But the idea here is that it's nice to not just jump straight into like, I want this from you, but instead being like, I have here the letter, an email that I wrote to a letter writer for Hollings. This is a little cringy, but what I wrote was, thank you for leading such insightful and informative classes over the past year, as well as for being so friendly and helpful. Your introduction to environmental science class confirmed that the environmental science major was the right major for me, and your class on water use in California remains my favorite class I've taken so far for its pertinence and engaging material. Like pretty cringy, pretty corny, but something like that where it's like, oh, you're thanking them for what they've done for you already, and sort of rehashing how they know you, because sometimes that can be helpful for people who have really, really big lectures. And yeah, the last sentence up there, yeah, it's like, you don't always have to do it if you know this person really well, but generally speaking, it's a good thing to not just jump into what you want from them. The next two elements kind of go together, but it's basically describing to them what the opportunity is. In this case, it would be the Hollings Scholarship and why you want to apply for it, right? So this is your chance to make sure that they are familiar with what you're applying for, because a lot of people will know what the Hollings Scholarship is, but not everyone will. And it's your chance to be like, this is what it is, and this is why it matters so much to me. This is why I really want to apply for it, and this is why I'm asking for your precious time. So having an opportunity to convince them of why this is a really good opportunity that, again, is worth their time to put it on your behalf. Okay, the next thing, and this is something that I've learned fairly recently from a professor, maybe some of you know Chelsea Wood here at SAFS, or Marine Bio, but she came in and she talked to people who were applying for the MSF-GRFE, which is a graduate school fellowship. And one thing that she mentioned that I thought was really interesting and potentially useful is when you ask for a letter of recommendation, she emphasized that the way that you word that request is pretty important. So what she was saying is that it's good to ask in a way that like kind of gives your letter writer an opportunity to say no if they don't think that they can write you the strongest letter of recommendation. So something to the effect of like, if you think that the Hollings Scholarship would be right for me, like I would be very grateful if you would be able to write me a strong letter of recommendation. Something like that where it's like, can you write me a good letter? Because you don't want someone who would just like say yes and then write you something that just, as we had mentioned before, just like says you got good grades. Like that is not helpful to you, and not helpful, not use of their time either. So some wording of asking the letter of recommendation, and then it's like if you have the time, if you can write me a strong letter, if you can speak to my ability, some wording like that, so that they don't feel like they are obligated to write it for you if they don't think so, because that won't be helpful to you. Okay. Another thing you definitely want to mention is what the submission deadline is, for a couple of reasons. First of all, you should make sure that they're aware of it so that they can have it on their calendar and they can make sure that they have enough time for it. And then also, like, when you're asking for a letter of recommendation, it should be far enough in the future where they're like, oh, okay, like, this person respects my time, and they ask for it a good amount ahead of time so that I have plenty of time to find an hour or two in the next month or so to actually write this letter. And then the last thing I would put in an email asking for a letter of rec is an offer to provide more detail that can help them write a stronger letter. So something like if you'd be willing to write me a strong letter of recommendation, like I would be happy to provide more information about myself, like my CV, my resume. And something else that I used to not do, but I always do now, is an offer to provide what I like to call talking points. So these talking points are sort of like things that you would want your letter writer to hit when they're writing a letter of recommendation. And letter writers typically are very appreciative of this because it makes it as easy as possible for them when they're writing your letter. And you know, when people like, you know, Jose or someone like that who has these really big lectures, offering to provide this and then providing it really can help jog their memory that it was you who did this thing in lab, or you came to their office hours and talked to them about these things. Because when you have, you know, a couple hundred students a quarter, like it is hard to keep track of those things. So making sure that they remember the things that you remember about your relationship is really key to getting them to write you a good letter. Okay, so that's roughly how I craft an email. These elements don't have to be in this order, but these are just generally good things that I would include when you are asking for a letter of recommendation from someone for the first time. Does anyone have any questions about any of these things? Yeah?
So, if we're writing an email to someone who is our TA, it mentioned that it has to have the sign off of the professor as well. Do we need to like email the professor as well, or do we just mention to the TA like, hey, this also needs this person's sign off, or like how do we do that?
Yeah, I will probably mention it to the TA when you are emailing them to ask. I don't think it's necessary at that point to like CC the professor or anything like that. Because they haven't accepted that yet, right? So you wouldn't, it's not, yeah, at that point I wouldn't include that, but yeah, I would definitely like mention it when you're like describing, like when you're asking about a recommendation, like if you were to be able to write this for me, and then just to say that like if you could write this for me, I'd really appreciate it. It would also require Dr. Guzman's signature or something like that as well. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is relevant to the Hollings like letter recommendation, but sometimes I feel like it's been helpful if there are details about the kind of letter, the extent of the letter, a statement that you're asking for. Right there, I mean, some people might kind of project out like how much are they expecting me to write, you know, how long, you know, the statement. So I don't know if there's details in this about the letters you're asking
Yeah.
for, but kind of something that provides the boundaries for the extent of the letter.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also for Hollings, it's a little different where they don't actually need you to submit a letter. What they actually do is when you put in someone's email address as a letter writer for you, they send you a link to a bunch of boxes that they have to fill in with specific prompts. So yeah, that's a good point, Joe, because you wouldn't want someone to like write a letter and they'd be like, oh crap, this isn't what they're looking for, that was a waste of my time. So definitely at some point before they actually write it, or you know, that might be something that you would like either mention the initial email or after they've accepted they'd be like, oh, thank you so much, like you should have received this link, and just so you're aware, this link will link you to this page that has these, that has boxes, not a letter like not a place to upload a PDF, for example. So definitely at some point before they would start writing, you would want to mention what it's actually like.
I can see how for some people that might even be a plus, that it's a more kind of efficient system than just write an open-ended letter that's a certain length, you know, that
Yeah.
okay, there's some structure to this, you know, you're responding to specific prompts or something.
Yeah. The funny thing is that I don't think that they actually tell you that when you're reviewing your application. There's just like a button that says like request recommender, you know.
Right.
The only reason I've done that, know that is because I wasn't told that.
That's really good.
So, yeah, a sort of a scope of how much it'll take them is definitely a good thing. Okay, so the next slide I have here is again a bunch of text, but it's sort of about how to interact with letter writers, both in your initial request and then in subsequent communication with them. So when you're asking for a letter, you should ask, the guideline is, 2 months ahead of time is great. That would be about now if you were applying this cycle, but you have to give them at least like 3 weeks, very minimum. But yeah, like 2 months or so ahead of time, 1 to 2 months, that's a decent amount of time to be able to, for them to be able to write the letter for you, and then also if they say no, for you to find someone else to write that letter. Again, I just put on the bullet point here, plugging talking points, which are just like, things that you want them to hit on and want them to remember when they're writing your letter. And then, once they've said yes, it's important to follow up repeatedly because these people are often very, very busy. And so it's a very good idea to send a bunch of email reminders and, something like, if you ask 2 months ahead of time, like asking or sending a reminder like a month ahead of time, and then 2 weeks before the deadline, and then a week, and then a few days. And these people will, it might seem annoying if you keep emailing them over and over again, like, write me a letter, write me a letter, write me a letter. But these people appreciate it, especially if when you're reminding them, you are being polite in how you're asking and also expressing your enthusiasm for the opportunity. So that comes across, we're like, oh, I'm just so excited for the Hollings, I really don't apply, this is such a great opportunity, I'm really excited to write me a letter of recommendation, please let me know if I can do anything to help you, I'm just so excited about this, it's due in 2 weeks. So they can't get mad at you if you're just being nice about it and you're just bubbling over with enthusiasm. Yeah.
Are you able to see in the application portal if they've submitted it?
Yeah, you'll get a notification. Yeah. So yeah, this was a note that Emily couldn't be here today put in, but yeah, they recommended that people submit early. So just in case you can see if you can get someone else. If you're asking someone for a letter a week before the deadline, that's really not ideal. But yeah, you should get a notification when they submit it. And yeah, you keep reminding them until they do, more or less. And then once you've gotten the notification that they submitted on your behalf, make sure to thank them because that will leave a good taste in their mouth, and more likely than not, you're asking for another letter of rec for an NSFREU or something like that you're applying for. And so, yeah, just being polite about that and thanking them for their time is a good way to make sure that they're willing to write you the next one as well. Okay, that's pretty much all I had about letters of rec. So I can talk about that as the essay. Before I move on, are there any more questions about who, when, or how to ask letters of rec? And for first year students, so again, since you're going to want to ask people who actually know you personally, find ways to interact with professors, go to their office hours, talk to them about their research, that sort of thing. Just so that you can start building those foundations, and so that when it comes time, you want to ask for letters of rec for this or for something else, that they will actually have a personal relationship with you. Yeah, Joe.
This is more, sorry, thanks for letting me hop in, it's just
Please.
interesting stuff. This is related to this process with letters of rec, but also just in general getting references for some more from my personal experience being a reference for job applications. In addition to thanking right after they do it, I really recommend following up and giving them an update with whatever the outcome is of it. It feels, first of all, good that you keep them in mind and hey, I just wanted to let you know, and even if it's, I wasn't able to get this one, but I really still appreciate your help with my application. And then definitely, if you do get it, please don't forget to update the people that wrote your letters of recommendation, because A, that feels really good, and you really don't want that to be out there that, hey, they didn't even tell me that they got this scholarship. So, an immediate thank you I think is great, but then no matter the outcome, it's nice to let them know that you're still thinking about their contribution, whether the outcome was you got it or maybe you didn't, but I think it's good courtesy because they might be letter writers for the future.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, we definitely do that. I've had people recommend, I haven't personally done this, but thanking them, even like a handwritten note or a card, that's like something that's very memorable, and yeah, like definitely update them on what the eventual outcome is, and especially if you get it. So, okay, let's talk about writing that essay, which is like a third of the criteria for evaluation. This is what's going to be definitely the most time-consuming thing when you're working on this application, and indeed most applications for various opportunities. So, again, really text-heavy slide, but this is the prompt for the Hollings essay. And I just want to read it for you and highlight some important things that you definitely don't want to miss when you're writing this essay. Okay, so it reads, this essay is a self-description of your academic, research, and career goals as they're related to NOAA's mission. And they send you a link to their website so you can make sure you know exactly what that is. And NOAA's mission is something that will come up over and over again when you are applying for this, and something that you want to keep in mind when you're writing this essay, and also when you are, putting in relevant experience, stuff like that, in like the basically CV resume section. Okay, they want to know about how they relate to NOAA's mission and how your proposed course of study and or research will help you achieve these goals. This is your opportunity to present yourself, your aspirations, and career goals in a concise manner. Include any background information that's pertinent, any graduate school plans, and provide insights into why you've chosen to pursue these education and career goals. Right, so this is like really talking about yourself and your journey and how you got to where you are today. This 2 to 3 page essay will be used to evaluate you as an individual, not necessarily as a scientist. So they're recognizing that, second year undergrads, you haven't really had that much time to do that much. So like, they want to know who you are. And your motivation for applying for the scholarship. This essay should demonstrate your organizational and written communication skills. And then they just want a couple of the last paragraphs here, just making sure that, as part of your opportunity to present yourself, you want to mention anything that you've done that's related to NOAA's mission. And then there's just like the length requirements. Okay, so what's NOAA's mission? Because they're really curious about, they really want you to keep hammering this. They have this cool banner here. So they really emphasize, some people call it like the 3 S's of science, service, and stewardship. And their one sentence description is that NOAA's mission is to understand and predict changes in climate, weather, oceans, and coasts, to share that knowledge and information with others, and then to conserve and manage coastal and marine ecosystems and resources. And there's a lot more detail on this if you just Google it, and then if you're applying also we'll share the evaluation rubric that they're actually using to evaluate your application, and there they list it out for reviewers so that the reviewers know what they're looking for. And when you see that, you can know what to put in so that you hit those points and make sure that you relate your application materials to NOAA's mission. And so, yeah, your job in this essay is to really make an argument about yourself, how you connect to these 3 S's, and why, through this mission statement, you are the best candidate for this opportunity. Okay, any questions on the prompt or NOAA's mission, anything like that at this point? Yeah.
So I know for like the listing, like things that we've done and stuff, we shouldn't include stuff from high school, but like, if we had like volunteer experience or something that like relates to this mission, should we talk about that? Like, oh, when, like in high school, this is the opportunity I had and I did it because blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I think, that stuff can be definitely relevant. If it relates to it, then I would list it. I wouldn't go back to like somebody did in like 3rd grade, but like high school stuff I would say is definitely relevant at this point, because it's only a couple of years ago that you were still in high school. So I would definitely include that stuff when there's those sections to write about your like relevant experience, research, volunteering, like that. There's definitely space for that. And then also you might want to put in the essay. Yeah.
Should you write about just how like your interests align with your mission, or should you just focus on like experiences?
Or a volunteering experience, that sort of thing, that helped shape who you are today. And then, just again, talking about like your motivation for choosing your major and why you came to UW. maybe it was just like like that was the natural choice and you're raised in Washington, something like that. But there's still things about UW that I think are, like the marine bio and the oceanography and stuff programs here they're really strong. Like they're way better than my undergrad program. And so just talking about like, oh, like this is giving me the opportunity to do these cool things and go to Friday Harbor and all these things, like just really excited to do that while I'm here. So after talking about how you kind of got to where you are today, you kind of want to talk about where you are today. So some things you might want to think about when you're writing this section are like, what are you taking and why you're taking those classes? So I know that as like a first and second year, a lot of what you're taking is pretty dictated by your course requirements. You're taking like chem or physics or whatever. But when you have a chance to choose classes, like why did you choose them? What was interesting about them? Especially if they are somewhere related to NOAA's mission, and if they demonstrate your sort of passion and you're taking initiative in forming this, forming your undergrad experience. Because again, I'm going to flip back a bunch of slides, but in this essay again, where is it? Yeah, the first sentence, they want you to talk about your proposed course of study and our research and how that leads you to your goals. And so you want to take the opportunity to talk about that and talk about how you are shaping your undergrad education. Okay, flip back. And then, outside of just classes and stuff, you also want to talk about what you're involved with on or off campus, especially if it relates to NOAA's mission again. Like what things do you have that relate to their science service or stewardship mission, and what you're kind of planning on doing the next few years at UW as well. So when I was writing this, I was talking about the classes I was going to be enrolled in the next quarter and things that I was going to do and do the field quarter and stuff like that, and just to demonstrate that you're thinking about that, and since you are less than a third of the way through your undergrad education, this is your opportunity to talk to about what you want to do, not just what you have done. Okay. So then after you talk about where you are, this is kind of your opportunity to present where you want to go, what your career goals and aspirations are, and sort of why those are your goals, which would probably have sort of led up to in the first section of your essay. But yeah, again, these should be something that some goals that relate to their NOAA mission or their NOAA mission fields. They definitely want to see that you've been thinking about those sorts of careers and make sure that they align with what they do at the agency. And then if you have any ideas about grad school, it's very early to be thinking about that, but just I want to get a master's in fishery science when I graduate, that sort of thing, so that they, you're able to present sort of that arc into those aspirations for after you're done with your undergrad. And then you just want to kind of wrap it up and make the case for yourself and why you're the best candidate for Hollings. Okay, questions about what you want to put in the essay. And again, this is just a very general outline. It's going to be very specific to you and what experiences you've had and what you want to emphasize. This is just a very general outline that I think helps you tell a story in writing that essay, and not just basically rehash your CV, because they have your CV, so. Yeah.
Under 2, were there any experiences in high school that were particularly formative? Does that have to be related to your major or anything because I didn't do anything in high school that was marine biology related.
Yeah. I would say as long as you can tie it somehow into sort of that science, service, and stewardship, if it is a service activity, which volunteering at a food bank, for example, that would be, it's not exactly what NOAA does, but it's sort of, it ties into that mission, or stewardship. For example, I did a bunch of after high school, the summer between high school and undergrad, I basically pulled weeds in a national park, because I was working with like the ecological restoration team. Very terrestrial, not at all what NOAA does, but I sort of drew that line between what I did and what they do, and sort of wanting to do something similar, well, NOAA, or I guess how you frame it is very important, and as long as you can sort of tie it into NOAA's mission and then that science service or stewardship, then I would include it. If you were like an ice cream shop, then like maybe not, but like if it's something related, then I think that there are definitely ways that you can frame it, and if you're applying next year, and we'll have a workshop where we actually like go through people's essays, like individual essays, and workshop those. So that's something that you can talk about at that point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on the essay structure?
Should we address each one of their little S's in particular in like a separate paragraph, or?
If you have something for each of the 3 S's, that's awesome, and you could do that. There's a lot of ways to do this. Certainly, if you have that experience, you could do that. It's just very like case specific. I definitely couldn't do that when I was writing the essay. Another thing you're gonna want to remember too, maybe tangential related, but your essay is going to go into their box. So any like cool formatting or like bolding or something like that, like science, service, stewardship, that won't show up.
Well, I wasn't thinking of doing that. Like pow, pow, pow. I wasn't thinking of like making like a billboard, but just like addressing it like in like an experience to each.
If you have that, that's fantastic. You could definitely do that. Yeah.
It's basically stewardship is just like service, right?
Yeah, or it's like that's sort of like management and conservation and preserving things. Yeah. Yeah.
Could stewardship also count towards like I guess this could also maybe be service, but if you were in, like for example, I was at the Seattle Aquarium and like there's a lot of like talking to people and like helping them like learn about the ocean and stuff, and like would that count more towards like stewardship or service? Like, because I know you talked about in the last week or whatever, it was like communications is also a big thing they do.
Yeah.
Like, where would that kind of fit in?
That would absolutely go potentially under each of the 3 S's. So again, like I'm gonna flip back. This is just like the very short version of their mission.
Yeah.
They also have like a 5-sentence, and then they have like a 20-sentence version, and then something that they definitely do mention. Oh, that I put in my notes. Definitely the education part of it would absolutely be related to NOAA's mission. And also in there, when you read about the purposes of the program too, there are bullets about like, like improving environmental literacy, like as you mentioned, and preparing young people to be like teachers and environmental educators. So that's absolutely part of it. Yeah, I would encourage you definitely to read in full the mission statement that they provide that has way more detail than just like science service and stewardship, which are sort of vague.
Very alliterative, but not.
Is there only one scholarship per school?
No, so there are, they give out about 120 of these every year, and there's no cap. So sometimes I've seen like, they always publish a list of people who got them in their institutions, and there are some years where there are like 15 people from the same university that got them.
So it's not like university specific?
No, you are not competing against each other. So yeah, it's definitely not like that.
Yeah, it's
So-
definitely, yeah.
I think we checked in our active student body right now, keeping in mind that they're juniors and seniors, we have 6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's definitely no cap on it.
Yeah. So like in the scholarship, you'd be like working with people during the summers and stuff, right?
Yeah, so I would encourage you on, I think the UW Marine Bio YouTube account, there's a recording of our session from last week.
Yeah.
And we go into a lot more detail of that. But yeah, essentially, TLDR version of the scholarship is it's financial support of about $10,000 your junior and your senior year, plus an internship between those 2 years at a NOAA facility is also paid. and then they also give you funds they send you out to DC twice to visit headquarters and talk to NOAA scientists, and then they also pay for you to go to a conference, present whatever research you did during your internship. So like, for example, I went to Puerto Rico to present my Hollings internship research. So there's a lot of stuff in there. It helped me drastically reduce my student debt. It's very multifaceted, but yeah, financial support, internship, and then like funds for travel are the primary things.
And this is all leading towards, in the end, getting like a job out of college and grad school?
It could, it doesn't have to be. The goal is to this is partly to help recruit and train people to do work in NOAA mission fields. So yeah, it's anything from working at a state agency, working at a federal agency, working at an NGO, being a teacher, being a high school teacher, being a professor, any of those things. That's what they're trying to help train you in to do eventually. But I've heard some things about guarantees of jobs at NOAA afterwards. It's not a thing. But it will definitely give you a lot of experience that will qualify you for those positions and other positions that are related. Okay, real quick, let me just talk about how they actually evaluate your essay. So these are the only 3 bullet points that they give to people who are reading essays on how to evaluate it. So the first one is just did they write a decent essay? And then the second 2 are really harping on NOAA's mission and NOAA-related workforce. So it's they want to see that you have a plan and goals related to their mission and objectives. And then, they want to demonstrate an interest, which is more than just I want to do this, but demonstrating that through your experiences and what classes you're taking, what internships you've done or you're seeking out, and they want to make sure that they are funding people who actually want to do things that NOAA does in the future. Okay, let's have a quick slide on, not quick, pretty text heavy, but on general essay tips that Emily will put together. As I sort of mentioned a few times already, you don't want to write sentences that don't say anything. Things like, I believe that the oceans should be conserved. Cool, me too. But it doesn't say anything about you as an applicant. It doesn't help sell you to the people reading your essay. So you don't want to write sentences that someone else could have easily written that don't actually speak to you as an individual. So the second bullet here sort of goes back to what we just saw on that previous slide. But I'm going to flip through it real quick. But again, these second and third things, a lot of it is about plan and goals and interest and eligibility to do this stuff in the future. So again, while you do want to explain how you got to where you are today and provide, as they said, provide insight into what motivates you, you do want to talk a lot about your goals and how they relate to NOAA's mission. Again, especially because they recognize that when you're reading this, sophomores and undergrad, they've not had that much of an opportunity to actually do a ton of stuff at this point. You want to have sort of a narrative structure, makes it easier on the person who's reading your application, as I've sort of talked about already. Again, you want to tailor it to this opportunity. So again, I would really recommend reading their prompt in detail, reading the mission statements in detail, reading the rubric in detail, and make sure that you are making those points about you and how you are, potential future NOAA employee, sort of. And then again, you're going to want to get as many people to read this as possible. So whether that be a peer or a friend or my mom read mine, she provides some good edits. There are resources that UW provides for you that you can do, and then also we are having in January workshops where we will pair you up with graduate students or people who have had the Hollings scholarship, and they can work on the essay with you. So just getting lots of eyes on it, really, really helpful for writing it. Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, well, I kind of threw cold water on the idea of me writing a letter of recommendation. This is an area I'm really happy to support you with. So I haven't been, I've never been in the kind of review process for Hollings related materials. In this capacity, I have been on scholarship review boards and looked at a lot of statements, and so happy to give feedback to anybody that's applying.
Okay, just gonna quickly plug this again, that we talked about last week briefly, but there is an Office of Merit Scholarships, Fellowships, and Awards, and they, their job is to read essays like yours and to work them through with you. This is just another great opportunity to get some more eyes on your essay. Okay, so when's it all due? End of January at midnight Eastern, not Pacific, so you need to submit it by 9 p.m. Pacific. But I would really recommend that you don't submit it at 8:59 Pacific, because they get hundreds of these applications, and with all that traffic, you don't want to be at the whim of, their server. So, yeah, aim to submit it ahead of time, a day or two in advance. If you can submit it a week early, more power to you. But yeah, just don't wait for the last hour or two. You don't want to miss it. You don't want to be like, oh, I need to submit this, before 9 p.m. tonight and then forget it that day. That would be very sad. Okay. I also want to emphasize here that it's quite a competitive scholarship. There's maybe about 700-800 applications they get a year, and they hand out maybe 120 of them. So it's less than 20% success rate. And with these applications, just like with a lot of other applications, it's a bit of a crapshoot. You can do as much as you can. You can write the best essay you can, put yourself in the best position. But ultimately they're going to send these out to reviewers, and then they're going to trust whatever that no employee thought of your essay, right? So it's if they had, if their coffee wasn't strong enough that morning and they're in a bad mood, that's not your fault, right? And that's just a sort of fact of academic life in a lot of ways. So if you don't get it, don't feel bad. But there are lots of other opportunities that you might want to be aware of for undergrad and graduate scholarships. Joe would probably be happy to talk to you about a bunch of these. There's just a ton of them out there. And then also, if you're not doing a Hollings internship, there are a lot of other great opportunities out there that you could apply for that you would not be able to do if you were a Hollings intern. So, yeah, it's just sort of how the cookie crumbles. And Hollings is great, but if you don't get it, there's a ton of other things to do out there. And I think in our grad program, I think there was 3 Hollings scholars of 80 grad students. So it's really, there are so many other things out there to do. So this is an awesome opportunity, but it's far from the only one. Okay, so this is the last slide that I have for today. So we're going to have, I think, 2 more workshops in January to work through people's essays. This QR code sends you to an RSVP for those workshops. We'll send out an email with that link, so you don't have to do this right now. But if you want to participate in the workshops, and if you are applying this year, we'll send you a link to a bunch of those resources, including past Hollings scholars at UW who provided their very nice provided their essays for us to provide to you to read, so you have examples of successful applications. We'll send you the rubric, other helpful tips and pieces of guidance that will help you with the process. And then, because we're going to be workshopping those essays, if you want to get feedback on them sometime in the next month, maybe when you're at home or over winter break or something like that, put together the first draft of that essay, and then if you can email it to me and or Emily by January 6th, that will give us enough time to get your application to other people to read them, and then so that they can provide feedback for your essays. So yeah, that's sort of the plan. Does anyone have any questions? Cool. Yeah.
So if our first years, would you recommend we start writing like super early, like now, or is that kind of necessary?
I don't think it's too early to start thinking about it. I do anticipate that over the next year, you will have a lot of experiences that you will want to include in that essay. So, you know, if you write it now, just understand you probably will like rewrite most of it in the future. But Joe has a flyer there for the Hollings prep program.
Your
You have a
first
flyer
year,
there.
you gotta apply for this.
Yeah.
'Cause- And because it will be a major feather in your cap for applying for Hollings, it's exactly the purpose of it, is to pipeline people for it.
Is this next workshop, are you able to help with the essay for the prep program? Is this just for the full scholarship?
Is there an
That's a
assessment
good
program?
question. So the way that they frame it is a cover letter and an RSVP, or sorry, CV, I don't know why I said RSVP. Cover letter and a resume for it. In my mind, after I've heard the guidance for this, it wouldn't be weird to take a really similar approach with the cover letter. I mean, even to be forward-thinking about it and be talking about, here's why Hollings Prep is something, you know, why I'm interested in what NOAA's doing with this. So it might be more truncated than the official one as far as the character, you know, what is it, 60,000 characters or something?
6,000.
6,000.
6,000, like
60,000,
25
yeah.
pages.
So it's gonna be probably shorter, but
Yeah,
kind of depends on the capacity of the volunteers.
It's not
we
something
have.
we've really talked about, but the deadline for Hollings Prep is like a month and a half or 2 months after the January 31st deadline for the full Hollings. I think it's like mid-March. or something
Yeah,
like
March
that.
14th, so
Right.
much more time.
If there's interest, I would be happy to do that, but I would probably, just because of the timeline that we're on, I would probably focus on the full Hollings applications and the January stuff. Once January's over, those applications will be in, and then if you want to do that, then we can set something up for that, of those two. That'd be cool. It's a good idea.
But I think good guidance and similar advice about getting a bunch of people to look at it. I'm also happy to review people's like cover letters for that. Again, it's something really familiar. And I think following the guidance on tying your application, even for the prep program, to the NOAA mission statement, why do you want to do it, that kind of stuff. I think it all holds true.